What is up, everybody? It is your boy. Happy Saturday to everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of the Pigskin Pete commissioned rants. This is actually harder than I thought it would be because it's like Mrs. Pete said last night. I rant about crap every single day. Most of the time, I just don't put it on video. So anyway, for those of you who don't know what's going on here, the fine supporters of the Pigskin Pete YouTube channel, or at least a part of them, have commissioned your boy to rant about random things that I didn't pick. All right? So for instance, in part 1, the very first rant I did, what was it about? Oh yeah, stewardesses. I don't have any problem with stewardesses. I mean, really, I don't even believe anything I said in that rant. Well, a couple things I believe, but you know, the whole point is to have fun and rant about random crap and probably try to annoy somebody or piss somebody off, because that's really easy to do these days. But I don't have any problem with stewardesses. It's a thankless job. They probably don't make enough money, and they have assholes out there like me on the internet trashing them for no reason. Well, there is a reason. It's because you told me to do it. So let's get to it. Here's what I've done so far. I've done stewardesses. They said ugly stewardesses. Even that was too mean for me. Traffic in Charleston. Now that was easy because I do that organically. There's really no preparation that goes into ranting about traffic in Charleston. Same thing with Ohio State. Holy hell, I rant about Ohio State in my sleep. That was super easy. I also did my cult neighborhood. Well, it is what it is. Just go back and watch that one if you hadn't seen it yet. But I still have a long list of rants to go on here, so let's get started, shall we? The day is not getting any shorter. Now, I should be ranting about this next one. Or not. I should be ranting about the person who sent in the $5 donation to hear me go on a 5-minute rant about this one. George's Light. For those of you who don't know what George's Light means, George, you know George. Most of you know George. If you're in the college football YouTube community, you definitely know George. George is an eccentric, and that's the word I'm going to use here, an eccentric guy that lives in Oregon. He's a Florida fan and a Florida man to the fullest. When you look up Florida man in the dictionary, there's a picture of George there. But he doesn't live in Florida. He lives in Oregon. But anyway, he calls into all of the college football YouTube shows over the years. Hell, he's been calling into my show since I've been doing shows, live shows for whatever, 5 years now. He calls into all the other ones, Mark Rogers, Uncle Lou, probably a bunch of other ones that I just don't watch or don't even know who they are. But George is all over the place in the college football YouTube community. But when he does call in on these StreamYard deals, of course, it's not like using a phone. It is kind of like using a phone, but not really like using a phone because there's also video involved. But he puts himself on camera. A lot of people don't put themselves on camera. George does, and thank you, George, for doing that because it's absolute gold. But George, he usually calls into these shows sitting in what I'm assuming is his living room, his living area in his apartment. And so you can see everything that's going on in the background, sort of like you can see what's going on in my house right now. Well, he's got this light. And I'm not talking about light like that. Like you would say, Pete, you got a light right in the corner of your room too, so why would you give George a hard time about a light being in the corner of the room when you actually have a light in the corner of your room? Well, here's the thing. I put that light there. It didn't come with the house, and it's not hanging from the ceiling. I can move that. It's just a lamp. The same with that lamp. But when you do look at all the other lights that were installed as they were building this place, they're all in the correct position. These hanging lights are hanging right over the middle of the island and the sink. This light is hanging right over the kitchen table in the eating area. This light up here, which I call a boob light, you guys all know boob lights. These are the most common cheap light fixtures that when they put in new construction. It's right in the middle of the living room where it's supposed to be. Not George's. Somebody, I don't know what Mensa student decided to hang a light in the corner of a room. In 42 years of being alive, I can't recall ever seeing a light fixture that's hanging from the corner of a living room. I need to ask George this. George, are you listening? If you are, please comment, whether it's in the live chat or in the comment section afterwards. Is there a light in the middle of your living room, or is the only light in your room that was installed in the corner? Now, I'm not an electrician or even an architect, but I know there's something wrong with this. I know a lot of people up there in Oregon are high all the time, including you, but how high was the guy who installed that light? I think the guy who installed that light was trolling you. What do you think about that? And now, consequently, he trolled you, you trolled yourself, and now here I am trolling you about it. Curse the person who told me to rant about George's light. That was difficult. That was even harder than the stewardess. What's next on the list? Panthers. Frank Reich. So, this is the college football channel mostly. Well, now it's a college football and obviously meaningless, pointless rant channel, I guess. I don't know. Especially during the off season. But I've been a Carolina Panthers fan since 1995 when they became an expansion team along with the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL. Now, I know I like to complain a lot about the Panthers lately. Well, there's a lot to complain about. First of all, I really wish instead of whoever sent in this recommendation about ranting about Frank Reich, I would have much rather you sent in a recommendation that me rant about David Tepper, because that's way easier. I don't really even have a problem with Frank Reich. Let me back up. The Carolina Panthers, for an expansion team in 1995, have really done pretty well. Under Jerry Richardson, you know, the diddler, the creepy old man, that's what he was. But I don't have a whole lot of complaints about the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, for a team that's so young, has really accomplished a good bit, right? Like, look at the sister, I call it the sister team, because they came in the league at the same time. The Jacksonville Jaguars. The Carolina Panthers, as far as an organization, since 1995, have accomplished way more than their sister team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, the Carolina Panthers have multiple conference championships. They have Super Bowl appearances. Hell, they only lost by 3 points on a field goal to New England back in the early 2000s. The infamous game in 2015 where Cam Newton didn't jump on the fumble. You know that, the MVP year for Cam Newton. They went, 15-1, I believe, that year. The only loss being to the Falcons at the end of the season. But anyway, but I don't think Jacksonville has any of that. So my complaint about the organization as a whole, as long as they've existed, is really a short list. I don't really have a whole lot of complaints. But I don't like David Tepper, and I'm really not sure about this hire, this Frank Reich guy. Now, let's start with Frank Reich himself. I don't really know much about Frank Reich. The only thing I do know about Frank Reich is the guy is old. He's like 70 years old. He's been coaching in the NFL for 40 years or something. I don't have any personal problems with the guy. And as far as I know, he might go out there and build the best Carolina Panthers team over the next couple years that I've ever seen in my life. And I'll be the first one here and say that I was wrong. I don't know. I think the guy's too old. I have a problem with that. I want young vision. If you look around the country, with the exception of probably somebody like Andy Reid, who's been around for a million years too, but at least he's been extremely successful. Frank Reich doesn't have that. But I've got a problem with the name. Yeah, you heard me right. Frank Reich. I don't know if I were him, and I'm sure he's proud of his family history. I hope he's not the third. I hope he's not the third. I hope there's not a Frank Reich the first, a Frank Reich the second, and then now he's the third. The only thing that can make that name worse is if his first name was Adolf. Adolf Reich the third. Holy hell. Time to change your name, bro. Let's get this family dynamic going in a different direction. Some positivity. I don't have any problem with Frank Reich. Well, I take that back. I do have a problem with Frank Reich. You know what my problem is? Mediocrity. Mediocrity. Oh, Pete, how dare you besmirch the good name of Frank Reich III. What do you know about it? Have you ever coached football, Pete? Nah, I ain't coached football, but I've seen him coach football, and most of the time it's mediocre at best. At best. The guy's barely over 500, like 1 or 2 games over 500, and all of his head coaching ventures. All of them. And they go, oh, Pete, Frank Reich was the quarterback coach for one of the greatest quarterbacks in our lifetime. Peyton Manning with the Colts. Well, that's great. That's amazing and fantastic. But what in the hell does that have to do with his head coaching record throughout his life? Nothing. You know? Just because the guy at the auto place is really, really good at changing tires doesn't mean he can rebuild the engine, does it? So just because you're a great quarterback coach for Peyton Manning, which, by the way, Peyton Manning was his own coach. Let's go ahead and get that out here too, because that's just a fact. Peyton Manning didn't need a coach to tell him what to do. Hell, he was probably telling Frank Reich III what to do. I hope he goes out and gets us a good quarterback, though. I'll tell you that right now. I just don't know, man. You know what? It's really less to do with Frank Reich, with me anyway. It's more to do with David Tepper. I don't trust anything. The guy, he's slimy. This guy's been robbing people from their money for his entire... The whole reason he owns the Carolina Panthers is blood money. He's been stealing from the average man. Hedge fund people are the slimiest, creepiest, dirtiest sons of bitches on the planet. And that's exactly what he is. He's like an unsuccessful version of Jerry Jones. That's what he is. David Tepper. An unsuccessful version of Jerry Jones. So I don't really have a problem with Frank Reich. Well, I might have a problem with Frank Reich. We'll see what happens in the future. Moving on to the next thing. Coaches whining. Oh, this is an epidemic, isn't it? And it just so happens that I am a fan, lifelong fan, committed fan. Hell, the reason I'm talking to you right now on the internet is because I'm a fan of the Clemson Tigers. And Dabo Swinney, God bless him. I love him. I wouldn't trade him for anybody else in the NFL. God bless him. But he has somehow got the tag of being the biggest crybaby in college football. Does he cry sometimes? Does he say things I don't like sometimes? Absolutely he does. Dabo Swinney loves to hear himself talk, probably even more than I do. But at the end of the day, he's not even close to the biggest crybaby or whiner in college football. Just look around the country. I think he gets, I believe that he gets that sort of, that label on him just based on some of the weird shit that he said over the past 10 or 15 years. Dabo Swinney's self-awareness, well, his self-awareness is pretty much non-existent, you know? And again, I love Dabo Swinney. So I'm not complaining about having Dabo Swinney as my head coach. Like I said, I wouldn't trade him for anybody. But his self-awareness, you know, it's okay to not care what people think, because believe me, I'm in the same boat as Dabo Swinney as far as that's concerned. I really give a shit what people think about me either. And there's 6 years of YouTube videos to prove that. But whining about stupid shit is becoming an epidemic in college football. And here's the thing. It doesn't solve anything. You know, it's one thing, and here's where I defend Dabo Swinney. It's one thing, if you're in a press conference and a reporter asks you a direct question, like, for instance, like, what do you feel about the way the NIL is going? Or what do you feel about the transfer portal? And the guy is honest, and he gives you an honest answer instead of all this coach speak bullshit just to keep himself out of the, you know, out of the headlines, it'd be very easy for him to tell you what you want to hear. Because we always complain about coaches that just tell you what you want to hear. Dabo Swinney doesn't care what you want to hear. So I don't consider that to be whining. Here's what I do consider to be whining. When you lose a football game, it doesn't matter if it's the first game of the year against the Citadel. It doesn't matter if it's a championship conference game. It doesn't matter if it's a playoff game. It doesn't matter if it's a national championship game. If your response in the press conference afterwards, after you lose, you're all butthurt and you start pointing fingers at people. And we all know the number one person that people point fingers at, or a group of people. And that would be the referees. I mean, this is fan stuff here, right? The fans love to go and talk about, I can't even go on Twitter during football anymore. It doesn't matter if it's a college game or an NFL game between two teams that I don't even care about or like. I cannot go on Twitter during football anymore. It's not good for your boy's health. Because all it is on there is a bunch of crybabies that cry about every single call. Every one of them. That's all they do on there. They don't talk about how this player or that player screwed the play up and didn't get the block. They don't talk about how this player or that player threw an interception. Everything is the ref's fault. And when the coaches do this in a press conference, it's the most sad, pathetic thing I've ever seen in my life. Y'all know who I'm talking about too, don't you? You know who I'm about to go in on. Hell, I went on the last time I did a rant video. Ryan Day. The biggest crybaby in the history of college football. Nick Saban's getting up there too. I don't know why Nick Saban doesn't get the same heat that Dabo Swinney gets, because he says exactly the same shit. Exactly. So does a lot of other coaches. You guys remember, what year was that? 2016, it might have been 2017. Hell, I have a bad memory. Dave Dorn, another crybaby. Jesus, I can't stand that guy. I can't stand that guy. I can honestly say that if Dave Dorn was the head coach at Clemson, I still wouldn't like him. And it would take a lot for me not to like a Clemson head coach. The guy just oozes crybaby. You guys remember when, after Clemson beat them, I think it was 2017, it was a close game too, came down to a field goal. I think they missed a field goal at the end of the game. I don't know what year it was. Now that's bothering me. It led them to the playoffs, so it couldn't have been, well, it might have been. I don't know. It was either 15, 16, or 17. After the game, this guy calls for an NCAA investigation into Clemson and Dabo Swinney because there's a kid on the sideline with a laptop. Laptop's not allowed on the sideline. This guy is blaming a loss on a kid who's posting on social media for the social media department. Blaming that on losing a football. How pathetic do you have to be as a head coach to blame your loss on an 18-year-old kid who's posting shit on Facebook? That is the single saddest thing I've ever seen a coach say. Ever. And he's not the only one. Coaches love to whine. They love to blame everybody but themselves. And here's the other thing, too. I'll defend Dabo Swinney on this one. He never blames anybody for a loss other than himself. Ever. I want you to go pull up a clip of anywhere where Dabo Swinney blamed a loss on the refs or on anyone other than himself. He always says the same thing. It's my fault. It's this coaching staff's fault for not getting these guys ready. And credit to the other team. They outplayed us. They outschemed us. They outcoached us. That's a man right there. That's not being a crybaby. Jimbo Fisher's another one. This scumbag, this used car salesman, this snake oil salesman. If Jimbo Fisher was on fire, I wouldn't piss on him to put it out. I don't even think Texas A&M fans would piss on him to put him out. They're about done with this guy. I went way over on that one. You're welcome. Next on the list, comprehending simple things. Now, I would change this a little bit, I think. I would change this to comprehending simple ideas, because it's not about things, it's about ideas. And a lot of people do have a real problem with comprehending simple things. It's really the reason I rant. No, I'm not talking about on YouTube. I'm talking about it's the reason I rant in life. It really blows my mind. I wonder what the average IQ of the average American is. You know what I mean? Like, what's the average IQ of the US population? So we did an IQ test at the Slob Olympics the first year. I had a 120, was it either 124 or 125. I was actually pretty pleased because I was hungover. I had brain fog. Somehow, that's way above average. Now, it's not even anywhere close to being genius level. I don't claim to be a genius. Hell, it's a miracle that I can put a sentence together. You see me every day. It's a miracle that I can do anything. It's a miracle I can get dressed in the morning. Definitely a miracle that I can run a YouTube channel. That's for sure. But what is the average IQ or intelligence of the average American? Because people can't comprehend anything. The most simple tasks is virtually impossible for the average American to comprehend. I apologize about that. I was rudely interrupted. Talk about common courtesy and comprehending simple things. I was just interrupted. I'm out here trying to entertain the people for no reason. Where was I at? Yeah, comprehending simple things. It's not really so much about comprehending simple things, in my opinion. I think you could put it right in the same category as common courtesy. That's what it's really about. I mean, I know that people in this country and around the world get stupider by the minute, but just common courtesy would go a long way. I'll piggyback off what I was talking about yesterday or the other day when I did the Pigskin Pete Part 1 commissioned rants when I was talking about traffic in Charleston. Well, in this cult community that I live in, according to Reich, I got this shopping center up here. There's a Publix, there's all kinds of doctor's offices, and restaurants, all that kind of shit, right? So there's a big-ass parking lot out there. Now, I have to go to Publix like everybody else to get my groceries. Well, I don't have to go there, but I choose to go there. But it's not just about here, it's about everywhere. Any parking lot in America that you could think of, I don't know, some of them are bigger than others. You know, between the front door of Publix and the furthest parking spot away is, I don't know what it is, 40, 50, 60 feet. I never measured it. Let's say 60 feet. But you drive through that parking lot, it's always busy. And you get these assholes, man. There's two kinds of assholes. Number one kind of asshole, the guy who will sit there and hold up the entire line while everyone's driving around trying to find a parking spot. They'll sit there and put their car and park for 3, 4, and even 5 minutes at a time so that they can get a parking spot that's 20 feet closer to the front door than if they went to the next one that's open. I don't have road rage. I'm not about to get out of my car and start a fight with some stranger in a parking lot. But I'll tell you what, I'll lay on that horn like a New Yorker. If you park in front of me and put that, as soon as I see, you know, when you go from drive to park and you see you gotta go through reverse to get the park if you have an automatic car, which most people have these days. These kids don't know how to drive stick these days. But you know how when you put the thing in park, you see the the reverse lights flicker as it goes through the reverse? As soon as I see that reverse light flicker, I'm laying on that horn, son. I'm laying on that horn. You're not about to sit here and park in the middle of a driving area so you don't have to walk 20 more feet. This is what I'm talking about. Comprehending simple things and common courtesy are one and the same. They're the exact same thing as far as I'm concerned. And number two asshole out there, comprehending simple things. But piggybacking off the person who has to sit there because they're probably fat and lazy to get a parking spot 20 feet closer to the front door. These people are just as bad. They might not be fat and lazy like that other guy, but they're just as bad. The guy that has to back into every single parking spot. It's always the same guy. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is backing in a 1984 Hyundai into a parking spot, are they? No, never. It's always somebody who thinks that their car is really special. You know, I got a cool car and I need to let everybody know it. I don't want you seeing the back of my car. I want you to see the front of it. And I've ranted about this before. This is not the first time I ranted about it. And hell, it probably won't be the last time I rant about it either. I even had people comment on that rant. And then they're like, oh, Pete, the reason that we do that, because you're probably one of them. I know some of you sons of bitches out there are watching, and you're one of them. And I struck a nerve with you, didn't I? Backing into a parking space. They go, oh man, the reason it's convenient. So you don't have to back out. You can just pull right. Man, shut the. It's not convenient for anybody else but you. That's the problem. Now I'm getting mad. Is this thing over yet? If you back into parking spaces, you're just an asshole.